Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. This week, I have a very special guest on the show. Keira, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Well, I'm really excited about our conversation today. So, I myself work with a lot of women, that have gone through maybe it's breast cancer or bowel cancer or things like that. And so they've had changes to their body. And, I have a client at the minute, we're going to dive into this more with what you do, but she has had to look for, alternate arrangements and things with her clothes, with her body changing. So could you share a little bit more with the listeners what you do?
Sure. So I am the founder and CEO of EverViolet, which is a intimate apparel brand that really accommodates changes in women's bodies as we navigate life, but mostly, post-cancer, post-surgery, accident, disability, aging. We all go through these physical changes as we go through our lives. And for me, the brand was born out of my own personal experience with breast cancer. I was diagnosed at the age of 40 with no known risk factors or, family history. And I was really shocked. I was just on a routine mammogram, like everybody is who receives a scary diagnosis like this. But in the end, I was one of the lucky ones, as what they thought was an invasive diagnosis turned out to be early stage. But because it was so extensive, I had had a bilateral mastectomy followed by reconstruction. And I would say, I navigated that as well as one could. Obviously, it was not easy, but I was so shocked to discover that getting dressed in the morning after those surgeries became one of the hardest aspects of the journey. And granted, I know I wasn't facing rigorous chemo and radiation treatments, but which of course would have been so much harder than getting dressed, but still just, wanting pieces that, could adorn my body that had faced so much loss with some beauty and femininity, but also while being comfortable and accommodated my new shape. And I also really strongly felt a desire for natural fabrics and things that would enable my body to breathe. I had felt like, wow, I'd just been through this whole health issue. I wanted healthy garments on my body too. So, they say a lot of great businesses are born out of personal need, and that is the story with EverViolet. And when we launched initially, it was focused on women who were post breast surgery, breast cancer experiences, current patients. And my mission was really to create a collection that accommodated all aspects, all surgery types, all body types. But when I was designing the garments, I did so with the hope that women with other conditions or other needs would also be able to wear the garments in an adaptive way. And that is what's happening. So we have customers who have all different types of cancers, who have limited arm mobility, who have skin allergies and skin sensitivities, people who've gone through other types of pelvic or thoracic or upper body surgeries, people with injuries like rotator cuffs and things like that. So it's quite amazing to learn over the course of this journey just how many needs are out there and just how greatly underserved these women are as they face change.
Yeah, and I 100% agree. I just had a client, she's booked in for shoulder surgery in a couple of weeks' time. And she was saying, she said, how am I going to get my bra on? I won't be able to lift my arm. And, another client said, well, you have to get your husband or your partner to try to help you. And she's like, I know, but, it's not just, one thing, it's everything. So I think if you can feel empowered, even if it's post-surgery, to be able to put on something, be able to one, put on something, and two, feel comfortable in that, then that is huge, just even for your sort of sense of well-being and mindset too.
Yeah, I mean, that's literally why I started the brand. I talked about my own struggles, and I tried 200 bras over 6 months. I swear to God, it was crazy. Not one of them worked. And then finally it was like, wait, this might be a thing. So I finally started speaking with other women, both women who were breast cancer survivors, thrivers, and other women. And I was shocked that this issue was virtually universal, that, anyone who had faced changes, anything from pregnancy, menopause, disability, I mean, the list just goes on. No one felt like there was a brand really addressing their ongoing needs. And furthermore, the more I spoke with them, the more I realized how much deeper this went, how much farther beyond clothing this issue went, that not being able to get dressed every day, feel comfortable, it was almost like a barrier to healing on emotional and psychological levels. And it was also a reminder of, whatever physical challenge you had just gone through or were going through. And so it was with that I realized, when women are comfortable, they're more likely to feel confident. And when they feel comfortable and confident, they're more likely to be happy and do good in the world. And everybody benefits. So it's really our mission to help women feel their best, no matter where they are in their lives and what they're facing.
Yeah. And I also love the fact that you use the natural fibers, because I know from quite a few of my clients, prior to being diagnosed with, the cancer or whatever they're going through, or even an autoimmune condition and things, they hadn't thought about chemicals and toxins and those types of things. And then they go through this journey and, the oncologist might recommend to them, maybe start to look at what chemicals and toxins may be in your food or in your clothes or in your cleaning materials in your house. And so they do tend to want to move to that sort of low tox way. And I don't know of any other brands that have done that. So yeah, I think that's amazing as well.
Yeah, I mean, especially for pieces that are literally right up against the skin, it's just seems like it's an important thing. The jersey, it took me a year to source this jersey, and thanks to my amazing business partner, we finally did. But it's a certified sustainable cotton modal blend, and it's naturally antimicrobial, breathable, moisture wicking. Many women who go through different cancers that are related to hormones get thrust into, a chemical menopause or a natural menopause. So it helps keep the body cool. There's just so much kind of built-in functionality, all because the fabric is natural.
And, so much thought, as you're saying, has gone into this because you've gone through it yourself as well. You have that, relationship to it, which I think makes a huge difference too.
Yeah, I think so. And, when I started the brand, I never wanted it to be about my story, because I feel like it's not about me. This is me trying to pay my good prognosis forward and support other women. But I do think that, given the fact that I have been through this journey and, really truly understand what women are facing, obviously everyone's experiences are different, but, to just, it brings a little bit of, I don't know, humility and sisterhood. And so much of what I do too is really lean into the community that we're building. So I think, when people know that I can relate, that I've had these surgeries and, I've struggled in similar ways, it just really creates a bond. And I'm really proud of the connections that we've forged in the community that we're building. It's really quite special.
And when it came to developing, the different pieces, did you already have a background in design or, any type of fashion that then led you to develop this? Or was it completely sort of a brand new venture?
Brand new venture. I've always been very creative and I've always loved fashion. But in terms of actually designing fashion, I had never once done that. I do have a design and art background. So, so I come to creativity very comfortably. But it was through the business partner I mentioned earlier. She comes with about 30 plus years and in fabric sourcing, product development, and production. So the way it worked was, I kind of would ideate the way I wanted the garments to look, and I'd sketch them out, and I have those abilities. And then I also kind of created a list of like almost criteria of what each garment needed to do. Like, okay, it needs to be able to accommodate this and not do that and not hurt here and have straps there. And, so kind of the meat and the ingredients, so to speak, that needed to go into it. And then together, she and I worked with a technical designer. She worked on finding the fabrics. And of course, I gave her a big list of criteria for that too. But yeah, then we brought in a technical designer who essentially creates what I refer to as like the blueprint or the pattern for the garments. And from there, we had samples made. And I pulled a lot of my fellow breast cancer thrivers sisters as wear test models. And we tested them out and we did get some feedback. So we made some changes based on that feedback, and then did another round of wear testing trials, and we were ready to go. But this journey, because I didn't come from the industry and because it took me a while to meet my partner, Megan, there were a lot of mistakes made in the beginning. I didn't know what I didn't know. For example, the whole technical design thing, I thought, well, if I hire a designer, they have to be able to know how to create patterns. Well, that's not always the case, but it would take going down that path to figure out, oh, wait, now I need to find somebody else to do that. So it was quite an experience, and it took a long time, but I'm very proud of what we created. And we're still using those same patterns and selling the same styles to this day. So.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, I know myself, even from clients coming in, say post breast cancer, and one of my clients has had to have a mastectomy and then a drain. And she was explaining to me the trouble of trying to find a comfortable garment and then also having to constantly have that side drained or have the drain in or try to pat it up to help it look like the other side. So she was like, it kind of depended on where she was at in her treatment scheme to what she needed to wear. And so she was getting really frustrated because she was like, there's nothing out there for that, because she did not know of your, shapewear and line. And so I think these are the things that, I even work with women and I didn't realize the extent of what happens when they may go through, a reconstructive surgery or a breast removal or whatever around breast cancer.
Yeah, it's hard to know unless you've gone through it. And there's so many different types of surgical scenarios now. I mean, we have women who are choosing, aesthetic flat closure, not wanting to be reconstructed. There's reconstruction types that actually use your own tissue to rebuild the breast mound. There's implants. There's multiple kinds of implants. Women have one side, both sides. It's lumpectomies can yield very large degrees of asymmetry. So it's really a negotiation, and this process of sort of getting to know yourself again, accepting yourself again, and then finding ways to kind of present yourself physically the way that you want to be seen. And that's different for everyone. But I'm very proud to say that all of our bras, they all have pockets and they all come with a pair of shaper pads, and they can all accommodate prosthetics. However, if somebody doesn't want to use prosthetics, some styles better than others, but they also will accommodate asymmetry beautifully. And you can be flat and wear them, and they're beautiful and comfortable. Some people, even if you're flat, you don't need the support, but you might want just an underlayer or something feminine, or just a little bit of discretion, because there is ongoing scarring. And, it's not like it's always people used to joke with me about like, oh, you got your free boob job or something like that, which A, I never wanted, but B, it's not like that at all, because, it's not a cosmetic surgery. You have plastic surgeons doing their best, but it's really, you end up with lumps and bumps and scars and, indentations and things that, aren't the way that we looked before. And so we all have different relationships to those things. And so creating a collection where women had variety and they had choice around how they got dressed and put themselves together was incredibly important to me.
And I know as well, you have a strong background in movement and dance. So moving is another, part, and a different, I put on sports bras when I'm going to move rather than, a nice, lingerie piece or something like that. So I'm sure that would have come into play as well when you were designing.
Yeah, in fact, it was because I'm so into fitness and I love to move that the collection really became a strong reality. More than anything after my surgeries, I wanted to get back to movement, and I knew I had to do so in a very modified way. But I'm a big fan of classes, and I do a lot of bar workouts and Pilates workouts, and I did yoga up until that point. That was harder to get back into because of it's hard to do a downward dog. Yeah, arm movement. But I could go back to bar class and do the lower body portion. I could go for hikes. But I would normally put on a fitted sports bra or a fitted tank top, and I just felt like, well, in those early days of recovery, I still had tons of bandages. I still had drains. There was no way I could do that and still have discretion. And so, obviously with the drains, you're doing very little activity, but as soon as they came out, I was ready to start moving again. And I mean, that's just so relevant for so many things. So our bralettes that we have, people actually wear them for light exercise, and we are in development on some sort of more robust support bras for people who are runners and do more, high intense activities. So that's very important to me as a person, but also as a founder, to kind of provide a breadth of garments that meet you at any kind of place in your life. So I think eventually we'll work into swimwear, sleepwear, more athletic wear, obviously extended lingerie. There's so much that we can do.
Yeah, well, that's amazing. Well, I know I have a client and she has had bowel cancer. So she has a stoma, and she said trying to find bathers that will accommodate that is extremely difficult. And she said, I've got a spa at home, but she said, I never go in because I never want to put bathers on. So,
Wow.
there are a lot of those barriers that women are just facing on a daily basis. And I don't think we kind of realize that, people in general, really, but, what you put on and how you feel when you're wearing it changes recovery outcomes as well.
It does. It really does. But I'm happy to say, please tell your client that we just came out with a product specifically designed to accommodate stomas and ostomy bags. It's great for people who've had pelvic cancers who want either heating or cooling packs to soothe the area of the body. It's also great for people who've had cesarean sections. So I'm really proud of this piece, and it really marks our expansion into the broader medical market. As much as I will always be devoted to women who face breast cancer, I feel like there's so many other needs out there. So this is a really exciting moment for us.
Well, that's it. And again, even you just mentioning things like cesareans and, maybe it's traumatic births or whatever it may be that you don't think about. Maybe, they're not smaller, but, cancer seems to be sort of more in the news, but there are, as you said, lots of other conditions that can be catered for, but there isn't a lot out there.
Yeah, exactly.
Now,
I all deserve to feel great. We all deserve to feel feminine and feel like ourselves and feel the best that we can at any given point.
exactly.
The change is inevitable, but I always say it's sort of what we do in the face of that change that really defines us as people. And I think, scars are these beautiful badges of courage. And, we develop so much resilience and grit and strength along these journeys that I think it makes us that much more beautiful as people. So that's really what EverViolet is all about. It's inherent in the name too. If you don't mind, I'll explain. So it's a play on the word evergreen, which is, this beautiful tall tree that's unwavering, often in face of a storm. But EverViolet really represents our inner worlds, our spiritual worlds, and our inner beauty. So it's really about this strength and resilience and beauty that shines from within.
Oh, well, I mean, that's beautiful in itself. And I'm sure people will appreciate that when they're, with how much care that's come in to designing the garments as well. But with getting your garments out there to people, have you been able to make relationships with either hospitals or surgeons, or has it been more of a commercial route that people tend to find you?
That's a great question. We're all the above, because I've had my medical history. I know a lot of people in these worlds. And whenever I've approached plastic surgeons or breast surgeons and tell them about the line, they're always so grateful to know about it, because they say to me that they can then provide a better service to their patients by not saying to them, go find some garment, but by saying, here's this beautiful collection, go to this website, and we offer complimentary fit consultations by Zoom or email or live chat. So we're really there to kind of hold her hand from the very beginning. She finds out that she needs our product all the way through to, our beyond collection, I call it, or, the pieces that, you wear once you're more healed. But so I've forged relationships with surgeons, plastic surgeons, oncologists, radiation oncologists, hospitals, cancer centers. And we also are starting to sell wholesale. So we're building relationships with boutiques, because a lot of women do like to go shopping and try things on and touch and feel. We have a very robust e-commerce site, so we do sell quite a bit from there. We're also at Nordstrom.com, which is a pretty popular US retail department store, and also QVC.com. So we're really trying to be wherever she is and, not make it hard for her to find us. Yeah. So we're kind of approaching all of these channels.
Well, that's amazing, because I know even a client that came to me recently, she had a hysterectomy and she's going back in for hernia surgery and that. and her surgeon said to her, go off, find some Pilates. You just need to do some core strengthening. And she said, is there anywhere specific or I should be looking for? And he said, no, just go do some core strengthening. You'll be able to find somewhere. And so she ended up finding me, but she's like, I had to do a lot of research to find out. She goes, I knew I needed something individual, not just a big group class. And it's not the surgeon's, fault. They're fantastic at their jobs and they do their jobs. But, I think having those steps in between that can really help people make a huge difference.
Yeah, it's really true. I'll never forget the day that I went for my pre-op meeting with the nurse navigator who works with my breast surgeon. And this was before my mastectomy. And she said, so you're going to need some sort of a camisole with drain pocket management. And I looked at her and I was like, what does that even mean? I'd never heard of drains before. I didn't know what to expect. So then she starts explaining the whole drain thing. And then I'm kind of like having these strange visions of like, wow, what is that going to feel like or look like? She said, just go down to the hospital gift shop. There's some there. And I went down and they were so scratchy. They were Velcro. They had these sharp edges. I thought, okay, I've never been through this before, but I can tell myself right now that there's no way that's going to be comfortable or feasible. So I searched and searched and searched. I couldn't find anything. And ultimately I ended up just getting a bunch of like rib tank tops that I layered. I must have had 4 on at a time post-surgery just to give myself some, discretion. And then they were fitted enough that the drains would kind of stay close to my body. And that's where I had the idea to make a camisole with internal pockets so that you can just tuck them in and they accommodate up to 3 to 4 drains on each side if one needs that, because that phase goes for many, many weeks in some cases. I think the least amount of time post bilateral mastectomy, at least in the US, is about 2 weeks. For me, it was 3, but I've heard women needing the drains for far longer. And so it's not just a couple of days of recovery. It's really you're feeling better. You're wanting to see people. You're wanting to get some fresh air. You just, and you don't want to feel like, I felt like an octopus just with these things kind of hanging from me. Plus it hurts, right? So it was really such an interesting journey. And I thought, I know that nurse navigator really meant well, but it ended up creating more fear than anything else. And so I'm really trying to eliminate that. I want to be a bridge where someone can find us. We can have a Zoom chat or an email chat or a phone chat. And I can say, okay, here are the things that you're probably going to want to prepare for. And then here are the garments that will kind of help you through that. And the way that the collection was designed is it really just escorts a woman through the entire journey. So there's like what I consider the immediate post-op, the recovery, and then the beyond garments. And of course, many women will just put on the beyond garments earlier because they're pretty and lacy and whatever. But it'll escort her all the way through. So
yeah, and I think it's having those options, isn't it? As you said, it's so inclusive for whatever stage you're at or whatever you're going through. And I think that also, for me, that gives me trust in a brand too, that it's not just, a one size fits all thing we're just trying to sell. We're really trying to be specific in what we offer.
Exactly. And also beautiful. I mean, I feel like one shouldn't have to compromise femininity or beauty for functionality. So that's really the intersection that we sit at. And, I bring my creative background in with beautiful colors that you don't see all the time, pieces that can be uplifting or soothing or calming. I've studied quite a bit of color theory and color science. And so I infuse all of that knowledge into the colors of our collection, really with the intent to kind of help the emotional, sensational states of the women that we dress.
Well, I also loved it because preparing for this interview, I was looking through, your website and social media and noticed that you were doing a call out for women that, were different sizes, in their breasts, that maybe they'd had a mastectomy on one side. So you were doing, a call out for real life people to obviously come in and model your, products.
Oh, from the beginning, we don't use professional models. All of our models are cancer thrivers. Sadly, some are no longer with us, but it was really important for me to not present these perfect bodies. The whole idea around EverViolet is that we are imperfect, and that is what makes us beautiful. So whether it's asymmetry or scarring, all different shapes and sizes and body types, we've always used real women from the beginning. And I think that makes it more relatable. I think most women can see themselves in at least one of the models that's, on our site. And I just think that's important when we want women to feel like they can look as beautiful as our models do. But yeah, they're just regular people like you and I.
Yeah. Well, I think that's great too, because it's like you said, it's realistic and you can look at it. It's hard sometimes when you are, say, shopping online and, every person that's modeling the clothes, 5'8", quite slim. And you're trying to imagine, okay, that's what it looks like on her, but I'm shorter and I've got more curves. And is this going to fit me, the same? So if you're seeing that diversity, through the advertising, then I think that makes it so much easier for the women too.
Yeah, I mean, it's all in the name of inclusivity, I feel, it's inclusivity of size, it's inclusivity of, race, it's inclusivity of surgery type, body type. I just think we all deserve to feel our best. And what I like to say is that we're bringing inclusivity in fashion to the medical world, though it's not limited to people who face medical challenges. We have plenty of customers who've had no major changes or no physical challenges. But they just really wanted wireless garments that were good for the body and pretty and also supportive. It's hard to find both. And our entire collection is wireless. So, and with different varying ranges of support built in. So yeah, so we're really for everyone, but we're especially there to represent those that aren't typically represented in the lingerie market.
Yeah, which is amazing. And, if we've got people listening in and maybe they have a family member or a friend that's going through something like this right now, do you have any advice for them of how they could support the women in their life?
Oh, that's a good question. I would just say meet them where they're at. I think sometimes we feel pressure to say the perfect thing or do the perfect thing. And I don't think those perfect things really exist. I think truly being present, truly listening, echoing back things that you've heard, leading with empathy. I think that's the most that we can do in the ways that we show our love to the people that we love. It's hard. And, when I was going through it, I kept looking at my husband thinking, this is harder for you than it is for me. And of course he thought, no, how could that be? You're crazy. But, I knew deep down I was going to be okay. And he was on the outside looking in with fear and wondering, and we have kids. And, there was just a lot that he was having to process. So I would also say, take time to take care of yourself as well as the person going through this, because it is something that impacts everyone in everyone's lives. And, the more we can come together in integrity and honesty and care, I think the better it will be. And the more silver linings may come out of the experience for all the parties involved.
That's fantastic advice, I think. And like you said, it's not just, obviously it's really hard for the person going through it, but, even if you're just part of that support network, providing care or emotional support, then you are going through a lot as well.
Yeah, I mean, I was one of those people who was always used to taking care of everybody else. So to all of a sudden have the tables turn and for me to have to ask for help, that was a big deal. It was really hard, but it was also a really, really good experience. And, it humbles you and it kind of builds gratitude for the people that show up. And, it's all of this experience of realizing that we're ultimately very, our lives are fragile and they're fleeting, and we just have to make the most of the time that we have and, love on the people in our lives as much as we possibly can. So, I don't mean to be sad about it, but there's really both sides, right? And I think these experiences just show us how precious life is.
Yeah, 100% agree. And I think, everybody listening in can relate to that. We all know, someone that's had to go through something like this, and maybe they're still with us and maybe they're not still with us, and, having to, process that grief or that period of time, I think, makes everybody feel grateful that, we've got this life, and you try to make the most of what you can with what you've got and when you're here.
Exactly. Yeah. Perfectly said.
Now, to finish off and, wrap up our podcast, I always ask my guests if there is one piece of health advice or just, general advice that they could give to our listeners that they could go off and instigate straight away after listening to this, what would it be?
I would say to just really make a point of listening to your own body. I think that while the body is subtle and things like cancer don't just show up as like a pain or something like that, usually, I think our body and our intuition can sense when things are off balance. And, the flip side of that is kind of worrying about every little twinge or anything that we feel. But I think over time, if we really just take the time through meditation or movement or any other means to really focus in on our internal selves, and also not be afraid to speak up if one does feel something is out of whack, because I've heard so many stories where people tried to talk or were afraid to talk about, what they were feeling, or maybe a physician didn't really understand it and kind of minimized the concern, and that person didn't say anything further, and it ended up becoming something important. So I think the more that we can really listen to our own intuition, to our own gut, to our own fluctuations in our body, and pay attention to that, the more healthy we will be.
I love that advice, because part of what I always tell to my clients is, trust your body, listen to your body, adjust your exercise if you're feeling pain. But, personally, my auntie she was finally diagnosed with ovarian cancer, but she had been to 5 or 6 doctors knowing something was wrong, and everybody saying, nah, everything's fine. And once she had eventually got diagnosed, she was stage 4, and it was really just too late. And unfortunately, she ended up passing away, but she knew that there was something wrong, and she kept trying to get those answers. And I think that's the most important thing that we can all do is listen to our bodies. And if it's communicating, in pain or a change in some way, then, honoring that is really important.
Yeah, I'm so sorry to hear that. That's such a sad story. And I sadly have heard it many times where people kept trying to understand what was going on, what changes, why they were experiencing the changes they were, and couldn't get an answer until it was too late. And so, not to scare your listeners, but just to be empowered around, your own sense of wellness. And yes, we age and things shift over time, but the body does have a pretty impactful way of communicating with us. So yeah, listening is the best way to heed those calls.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Now, where can our listeners reach out and connect with you and find your beautiful products as well?
Yeah, so our website is everviolet.com. We offer complimentary fit consultations through email, which is hello@everviolet.com. And we have a live chat on everviolet.com as well. On Instagram, Facebook, we are at EverViolet. And we are also on LinkedIn and Twitter. Oh, sorry, X.
Yeah. Well, that's all good. I'll link it all up in the show notes too, so listeners can head there and click directly on those links. But thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your story, Keira, and sharing your mission, because I think it's such an important one, again, for women. I'm all about empowering women and women's health with this podcast, and getting this kind of information out there to women is really important.
My pleasure. And for anyone listening, if you have any concerns, questions, me and my team are always, always happy to take questions and invite you to be part of our community. So we welcome all of you.
Amazing. Well, thanks again so much for coming on the podcast. It's been fantastic chatting with you today.
Thank you so much.